It's another episode of Purposely Unplugged with Lori. How are you, Lori?
Wonderful. Happy summer. How are you?
Wonderful. I agree with you. I am that. And summer's ready. It's going. It's fun. It's always, enjoyment. And we're going to take a hard right turn on that one today. Like we always do. Disclaimer right here, folks. We're going to talk about trauma and its effects. And just, I want to start with something really simple because that word, I don't even know what the definition is. You know what I mean? Like when you start talking about trauma, I guess it's an emotional behavior that's created by an event of some sort.
It can be. And the problem with the word trauma, Dave, is that it means so many different things to so many different people. And even every therapist you're going to talk to, we're going to talk about it in a different way. But the bottom line is something has happened to someone that's caused distress, and that person's body, mind, thoughts are all connected to that, and it causes some kind of disruption for them. So that's really why folks who have lived with trauma reach out to therapists of any kind, not just trauma therapists, but all therapists.
And I said off air to you, I think everyone has some form of trauma in their life at some point, somehow, and it's probably how you cope with it, and everybody's built differently. So can we look at that angle for a minute and get your thoughts?
Sure, absolutely. So the first thought I'll give is last month we talked about grief. So death can be a trauma, an accident, bullying, abuse. It could be a partner that has an affair. It could be a medical condition. It could be chronic illness. So trauma can be almost anything. And so to different people, it's how they were raised, how they dealt with stress, how they were trained to deal with stress, but then predominantly what this incident or multiple incidents mean for them on a daily basis. It's how they cope in their daily basis and if they're coping or not.
If you have a trauma that's like happened early in your life and you're, you feel like maybe you've dealt with it, but let's be honest, you haven't. Is there other things that can trigger it, like come back at you?
Well, absolutely. Things as easy as a smell, a song, a movie you watch, those are like triggers for most people. But then situations that happen, like perhaps a death now triggers something that happened before, or perhaps that infidelity in a marriage triggers something that happened before. So there's multiple ways to look at it, but absolutely, if something happened young in your life, it may still be there. And then the feeling you feel today, it takes a bit to unlock it and get back to the root if the person wants to. Some people deal with current trauma and then realize, oh, there's more under this. And so, they may then go to the things that are under. Perhaps it's their choice.
Why do we have such a hard time letting go of trauma, or why do we not deal with it?
So two great authors, Dave, and that's what brings us back to the bookshelf. So we have Kolk, which Body Keeps the Score, and we have Gabor Maté, When the Body Says No. So these two books, Dave, lots of clients tell me, look, I tried to read that book, and usually it's one of these two. I tried to read that book and I just couldn't get through it. Or I tried to read that book and it's just too traumatizing. So these books are the ones that we're going to talk about today because both authors do a great job talking about trauma and what it means and how hidden or buried, that was your question, how hidden or buried it might be. And both authors do a fabulous job of beginning to talk about that. But both authors are difficult to read, which is why you might want to reach out to a therapist and just make sense of what it is they're trying to say.
Yeah, sometimes, books can be hard to break down sometimes if it hits you like a wall and you can't really get through something because the concept is not, maybe if you're living with that trauma, you can't understand that concept at that time. So you're right. That's probably where therapists come into play and they can help. Are those books a good start, or do they open a can of worms? Curious.
They're both fabulous starts. So let's spend a minute with Kolk for a minute. He talks about shame. Lots of us carry shame and we're in these shame cycles. He talks about that. He talks about flooding. This is when an emotion or something that happens is so big that we can't shut down the emotional response. He explains that. He talks about mindfulness and how the mindfulness piece can help us begin to calm the sympathetic nervous system, which is wonderful. So he talks about a lot of things, and he's a great start. Gabor Maté.
Wait. Back up.
Okay.
Wait. You already, look you're dealing with somebody with a grade 12 education. Slow the heck down, will you? Shame. What the heck's with shame? Explain that.
Shame cycles are at a majority of the trauma that I see. I did something wrong to cause this. It's my fault. Or I'm not good enough. It's my fault. And these shame cycles, often we don't talk about because we don't want to talk about them. But with a therapist, you have the place and the safe place to talk about things that you've never talked about before. And honestly, Dave, shame and shame cycles come up all the time. It's something that I'm used to hearing. And I am so grateful when a client can bring something up, because likely we're talking about it for the first time in their life.
That one kind of, you've got me on that one. I'm kind of stumped because I'm trying to think of what I could equate it to as far as the shame cycle. I mean, I'm kind of at a loss, like for myself. I have no shame.
Well, I can give you an example. So take
Sure.
a young person who lived with divorce. That young person may think they caused the fights, they caused the divorce, then the multitude of traumas that come out of a divorce. So then that child grows up and now becomes an adult, and that shame cycle gets reinforced when they have an argument with their partner, and then again feels like it's their fault. So something that was so deep and they buried because they were very young now might come out in their own relationships as an adult. That's a good example of a shame cycle.
Well, I just blamed it on the booze. It wasn't my fault. I mean, in my family growing up. I mean, I think that's the other part of it too. There's a certain level where you have to understand it's not you, it's them. Right? Like, I mean, to me, that would be okay. I didn't cause that. They did that. I mean, but I think I mean, the perception is you probably think in most cases like this, I'm okay. It's not me, it's them, right? I don't know. Like that, it's an interesting topic because I never really thought about shame in that way, but now you're bringing it to light, and I see how those connections that you just made for me would have people think that way, right? Or, I suppose in a lot of cases too, it's just what your parents laid upon you at your feet to live up to in those expectations, and that might be where the shame evolves from. Wow.
True. And so what I also hear you saying is that the perception is different for everyone. So you were able to say, oh, that's them. But some people don't have that ability and take it on themselves. So there's a couple topics really in there that maybe
that goes deeper.
Full episodes on their own.
Because then you can look at how that offset. You might compensate for that within your family with your offspring, right? And you and I both seen this where they take on that responsibility role, right? And I don't know if that's a shame thing or if that's just that can definitely lead to problems later on because you always feel this need to take care of people. Well, you and I both seen that.
Yeah, and that goes back to that polyvagal fight, flight, freeze, fawn, because fawning is people pleasing. So absolutely. So Van Kolk just does such a great job of looking at these things and giving someone the chance to read through it, think about it, and then come back to a therapist and really say, okay, what does this mean for me? And start to unlock it.
So we talked shame. What was the second one on there that I interrupted you with?
Flooding. So this is just when someone gets so emotionally overwhelmed when they think about a trauma that they can't think, they can't breathe.
That's the freeze.
Well, it can be, but emotionally it's flooding as well. So that's why when we talk as therapists, we help the person to move through the flooding so that they can find some regulation, because they may not have found that regulation with anyone else in their lives. So that's a big role that we play, co-regulation, just helping someone breathe for a minute and let that flooding pass and move forward.
Like redirecting, really.
Kind of.
Waterways. You're making it sort of calmer within that sea of flooding. Wow. So and he does in this book, he's taking on those and then offering some points on how you can cope with it, correct?
Absolutely. So landing in mindfulness and landing
Oh,
in
yeah.
landing in those things. So it's a great read, and it definitely gets the brain body connection. So in both of these reads, you really understand how the brain affects the body, how the body affects the brain, and how those cycles get locked in at a brain level.
And the other book was The Body Keeps the Score, correct?
Gabor Maté, The
No,
Body.
The Body Says No. That was when The Body Keeps the Score. I'll get them right.
It's okay.
Hey,
Gabor,
are they in audiobooks? Might be better for me, wouldn't it?
truth is, I don't know, Dave. I haven't looked, but if
I
they
bet you.
are,
I'm sure they are.
so Gabor Maté, When the Body Says No. So this is more about attachment, what happens to us early. This is more about no one understands me, and because no one understands me, I can't get my story out. I can't find a solution. So a lot of inner healing work, a lot of work because of anger, childhood stress. So his bottom line is that stress will affect us. So that could be work stress, home stress, life stress, medical stress. Stress does affect us, and that is where then the body gets immobilized in some situations.
It's called a heart attack.
Yes.
Just
For
an
some
example.
people, Dave, that is what it means. Yes.
And I think too, that goes back to if you don't cope with stuff well, and when the body says no, maybe you're eating all the wrong foods and you're doing all those
Yep.
things, you're not exercising, you're not sleeping, and that stress will have that detrimental effect, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And he's talking about things about arthritis and inflammation and autoimmune.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
about heart, I can talk about autoimmune. So absolutely, he's talking about all of these things that just make a client or give them the chance to stop, breathe a minute, and think, oh, I didn't think about it that way. And then we can begin to move through it. So he closes the book with a great chapter. So his last chapter is the best because he says we have to accept, we have to be aware, we have to look at anger, we have to look at autonomy, attachment, assertion, and affirmation, which is too much for this show. But definitely,
Disclaimer.
his 7 things at the end of his book really are grounding and help us to realize where to start, like with awareness. What does this mean for me? What do I think when I think about this? What do I feel when I feel about this? So even his section on awareness is a beautiful section to read.
Okay, let's talk awareness just for a minute. So when you're aware of a trauma or something that's held you back in your life a little bit, and you find your own way to cope with it, I guess you're not really breaking it down then, are you? You're just finding a way to cope with it. We're going back to that strategy of just where people will just band-aid things instead of actually addressing the issue at heart. So
I like the way you say that. So the awareness piece is really just sitting in it. What does this mean for me?
Explain that to me.
Mean? Well, so let's think of sexual abuse as a child, how that person held on to it, how it kind of changed their life, changed their thinking, changed their behavior, and then sitting in the awareness of that's why I think that this is why I feel that. This is why I have difficulty with that. So even around that, when you mentioned eating a few minutes ago, it's everything we eat. So absolutely, sometimes that emotional connection goes all the way back to a trauma, and then we are eating when we're happy, we're eating when we're sad, we're eating when we have no emotion, we're eating when we have too much emotion. So food is linked to a lot of what I talk about. And I'm not a nutritionist, but I can understand and help a client understand how food has been connected to a trigger or a trauma, which is an awareness piece. That's kind of how I got there.
You said no emotion. And I think I want to explore that because I think that may be where people just turn everything off. They don't want to deal with that trauma, but they also can't deal with happiness either then, can they? They're just stuck in a purgatory where they can't move forward or backwards. And do you see a lot of people that get stuck that way?
And that's a big question. That might be a whole show. So let's hang on to that thought. But absolutely, stuck can mean a few things. Like someone who's a perfectionist is trying to have everything perfect so that nothing can go wrong because they're not good enough.
Gotcha.
See how deep that goes?
Yeah.
So, or someone who's constantly busy, and I used to be guilty of this, constantly busy, constantly busy. So I didn't have to sit in my own feelings or my own emotions. So that awareness piece is really about, okay, I'm not feeling okay, but why? Or I'm feeling anxious, but why? And really spending the time with the therapist to look at that and to undo that.
Okay. And I don't want to use the word reprogramming, but it almost seems when you come through that trauma at the other end, you're changing you're changing your brain, really. Like your thought process is changing, is it not?
Well, it's neural response. We call it neural
Okay.
response, but yes, absolutely. And I mean, the biggest modality for that is EMDR, again, which is another whole topic. But absolutely, it's sitting in the trauma, working through the trauma, thinking through the trauma, feeling through the trauma, and then being able to reset it. So rather than reprocessing, even resetting,
Yep.
thinking about something different, feelingly different about it, that's a good place to start.
Yeah, redirection in that thought process. So this is another question that someone asked me about you specifically. Hey, I saw your podcast about you, Laura, talking about, I think it was one we did a while back, but they asked, do you just, if they called you, that was their thing. If I call her, does she charge me right away? And I said, I don't know. I don't think so. I think you get like one session where you guys just sit and get to know each other. Can you verify that, or so I can pass that information?
Absolutely. In fact, most therapists will do a consultation on the phone.
Okay, they
because,
didn't.
yeah, we need to know if we're the right therapist for that person. So I do explain the masters and then my trauma work, the EMDR and attach. So it gives us the chance to explain that, but it gives the client the chance to say, in a nutshell, like short version, this is what I'm facing. And then you can decide as well if that therapist is the right person or not.
The other part that I always think is, if somebody asks me that, and I have been asked that, I always say there's no judgment.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's the critical part right there, right? Because they don't want to talk to family, they don't want to talk to friends, they don't know who to talk to. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, no, Laurie's good, no judgment. Like, she puts up with me every month. Come on, like she's doing really good work, and that's the important part of it. How do people get a hold of you, Laurie?
Phone is always best, 226-934-7425. And absolutely, with all of us, Dave, there's no judgment. I mean, all of us. I can't just say myself, but all of us. Now, the unique thing about me, though, Dave, is I operate outside, off-grid. No water, no Wi-Fi, no hydro. So it's just this lovely environment where people get the chance to kind of just breathe and just focus in a different way. And that's why I do what I do the way that I do.
I think it takes away all the distraction and allows you to be open-minded.
Yeah.
This has been another podcast with Laurie from Purposely Unplugged. We unpack a little bit on trauma. I still think we're going to be doing a little bit more on this because I got a whole list of things here that I want to talk to you about on trauma, but we'll do that another day when you're not quite so busy. Thanks for doing this. Had a lot of, I have a lot of fun learning. And I think that's the other aspect of this, that we want to help people learn about who they are and maybe make those pathways for them, right?
Absolutely. That is it.
Take care. Have a great day.
Take care. Bye-bye.